Welcome everyone to Ecopsychology Voices, an interview series with some of ecopsychology's luminaries. Hello, my name is Carol Koziel, and I'm the founder of the Canadian Ecopsychology Network, the host of this program. Linda Bizel and I co-created this series. Today I have the distinct privilege of being in conversation with Dr. Glenn Albrecht. Just going to tell you a little bit about our guest today. Dr. Albrecht retired as Professor of Sustainability at Murdoch University in Perth, Western Australia in 2014. He is an environmental philosopher with both theoretical and applied interests in the relationship between ecosystem and human health. He has pioneered the research domain of psychoterapeutic or earth-related mental health and emotional conditions with his concept of solastalgia, or the lived experience of negative environmental change. New concepts such as his idea of the symbiocene, hope I said that right, are also attracting international interest. Glenn now works as a farmosopher on Wallaby Farm in the Hunter Region of New South Wales, Australia. Welcome, Glenn. Thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with us. Is there anything I missed in your introduction?
No, I don't think so. It's just lovely to be with a bunch of eco-psychology people. It's the first time I've actually made this kind of direct contact. Of course, I've written and published in the journal Eco-Psychology, but I don't think I've ever met another eco-psychologist. So this is a wonderful new addition to life for me.
Super. Well, thank you. And today we're going to talk about your new book, Earth Emotions, New Words for a New World, published by Cornell University Press, came out in May 2019. And I'm just going to start with an endorsement on the back from Richard Louv, author of The Nature Principle. Glenn Albrecht, one of the most important eco-philosophers of our time, is also a map maker. He names the roads ahead, the dead ends, the detours, and the potential destinations. He describes those roads with a new language of emotions, those now emerging from his tragedy, and the possibility of the earth. So let's just start, Glenn, with what are earth emotions and why map them?
Right. Well, the idea behind the book is to provide a new or alternative way of examining issues like global scale development and global issues like climate change and the impact that they're having on people. We observed the science of climate change, for example, has been active, vocal, well-known in scientific circles for at least 30 years and possibly longer. And yet it hasn't really had any traction on the policies, leadership, and indeed the zeitgeist of countries like the United States and Australia. So we've seen science unable to do what we would hope it would do, which is to inform people and bring about social change. We're also seeing the documentation of things like the collapse of the Arctic system and the levelling of the Amazon. We're getting images, top quality images of the destruction of the world, and they too don't seem to be leading to significant change in people. So the aesthetics of change are, in a sense, almost holding us back. It's beautiful to watch the world disintegrating. So my attempt to focus on the emotions that are connected to our relationship to the earth is, in a sense, the last-ditch effort of a 67-year-old father and grandfather to alert the world to the fact that not only is the world changing, but that it's having an impact on us personally and collectively, and that the avenue or the path, even the map, via which we can begin to understand the impact that it's having on us is through our emotions. They can be supported by facts and they can be supported by the images of collapse, but or the reverse. They can be supported by images of that which is left intact, in situ, extant in the world, which is just fabulously beautiful. But the point is, we need something different and powerful to leverage the way people are viewing the state of the world, to put it bluntly. So my attempt to frame this debate and discussion and analysis through what I call earth emotions is what a philosopher can do. I can't do the science myself. I'm an amateur photographer and I do my best, but at the same time, I'm not an aesthetician of the world. What I am is somebody who is philosophically trained, is a transdisciplinary thinker, and I come to the conclusion that what I call the psychoterratic earth psyche states is best expressed through a phrase like earth emotions. If I had have titled the book Psychoterratic States and the Future of the World, I don't think the average punter would have picked it up. Whereas the word emotion, I think, conveys a lot of power. And so I've framed most of the discussion in a way that I think is, well, I hope that it's accessible to people outside of academia, and indeed will actually attract people's interest and attention. Richard Louv, is a wonderful writer, and I'm pleased to call him my colleague. We communicate with each other, and he's picked up the idea of a map, and I'm more than happy to run with that. I tend to think of my work as some kind of play, a Greek tragedy or a Greek triumph. I'm not too sure which way to describe it, but it's a two-act play in a sense. It's beginning to set up the negative emotions versus the positive emotions. And I've been criticised for being too binary, that I've simplified the world down to good versus evil. And since the book's been published and I've been getting some feedback, I've realised that I'm not binary enough. I've set up too many variables. The drama that I'm trying to describe in the book is really very simple, and it's an incredibly powerful and ancient set of values.
So just continuing on that, you mentioned a couple of times that World War III will be an emotional war between positive and negative earth emotions. Can you expand
Yes.
on that?
Well, it's largely because any other kind of war is going to wipe us out. I think the only thing that prevents us from wiping ourselves and other species out is mad, mutually assured destruction. And so we can saber rattle all we like, but if anybody starts firing off nuclear weapons, it's pretty much the end of the game. And most of us, I'm just looking at those that I can see in my little boxes. We're old enough to remember the fear, dread, angst, nausea, and despair that was caused by the threat of nuclear Armageddon 3 decades or 4 decades ago. And we're now going through that kind of stress again, because not only do we have nuclear Armageddon staring at us once more, perhaps it had never gone away, but we've also got the eco-apocalypse that many are now writing about. And I think it's a good thing that people are waking up to the possibility of the eco-apocalypse and how horrendous it is. But my work is to take us to that abyss and then beyond. And so the war has to be won. And if it's an emotional war, it's one that we can engage in without anyone getting seriously wounded, perhaps emotionally wounded. But I'm of the view that biophilia, the life-affirming emotions, will win the day. And if I'm wrong on that, I'll go and sit in the corner, put my hands on my head and start rocking back and forth.
So the other emotion that you created 15 years ago is solastalgia.
Yeah.
And chapter 2 is a lovely historical review of how that emerged. I encourage everyone to get the book and read that, plus all the other stuff. But how has the term changed in 15 years? Has it broadened?
I don't think it has. I mean, I occasionally go back and read my old work, and I think I'm fairly happy with the scope and scale of solastalgia. I mean, what I tried to do with it was to define a particular type of emotion that was connected to negative environmental change. And in the English language, there was no such word in any dictionary or in any context that made that particular connection. And so the closest term to it was the term nostalgia, which was created by the German physician Hofer in the 17th century. So nostalgia was close in the sense that it was a place home-related melancholia or despair, which had, by the way, both physical and mental attributes, so powerful that it could kill you. And so I was dealing with something that seemed not to be killing people in the upper Hunter region where there is large open-cut coal mining, but it was extremely distressing. So I knew I was dealing with what Hofer had called an algia, where the term algia doesn't just mean pain in a biophysical or medical sense. It's also referring to deep distress, the grief, the pain, the melancholia of nostalgia is carefully outlined by Hofer. So this pain, distress, grief, despair needed a word or a concept that would adequately describe what it was that people were feeling at the loss of the home environment within which they were living. So it was clearly close to traditionally found nostalgia or defined nostalgia, but because these people were living at home, it obviously was a different context for a similar kind of what I would call psychoterratic state of mind. So the reason why solastalgia was created was to provide a single concept to describe this distress that people were feeling at negative changes in their loved home environment. And I think that's still the essence of the definition, that it's never been confined in any way. It's in the sense that the built environment and the natural environment constitute really large expanses of the possibility of, in inverted commas, the environment. And the only problems I've ever had were to try and confine solastalgia to things like the built and natural environment. I've had people wanting to extend the concept to include humans, particularly their neighbourhood with humans of different skin colour or ethnic origin. And I've had to fight white supremacists on that one. So in other words, some people have wanted the concept to be broader than it is, and I've tried very hard to keep it confined to something which is manageable and something which doesn't bleed into issues of race, racism, supremacy, and all the other issues that we could deal with. I saw that somebody was interested in solastalgia with respect to animals and whether or not the non-human world could experience a state of solastalgia. And in the book, I actually suggest that is an area that needs our human attention, because other sentient beings that are having their environments, their home environments disturbed, are obviously experiencing something distressing. Now, it may not be solastalgia, but it's something. And if we're concerned or interested about the emotional lives of other animals, as Mark Beckhoff or someone like that would put it, then solastalgia is a start, and maybe we need to think of something new to describe the existential distress of animals that are being forced to migrate because of climate change. It's at least a thought that's worth pursuing, and I don't claim that I've nailed it, and I've just really raised it as an issue. Why shouldn't we think about the emotional states, particularly the negative emotional states that might be akin to solastalgia in non-human species that are sentient and are obviously in a distressed state? I mean, those walruses that were plummeting off the tops of cliffs were not happy. So let's leave it at that, and then I'm happy for other people to begin that process of observing and naming and analysing the states that are relevant to these huge psychoterratic upheavals that are going on in the earth right now.
So just one last question about solastalgia. Can this be a planetary emotion?
Planetary in the sense that if we see the earth as our home and bear witness to its destruction and negative changes, then the answer is yes. And I've always had the scale of solastalgia is anything that you conceive of as home, from your own house and garden to the planet as a whole. Now, we obviously can't have a lived experience of the whole Earth as one thing, but we can have it in a virtual sense, and it's it's ever since the moon landing and images of the Earth from the moon, we've actually had an image of the Earth as home, as a coherent thing, something that other humans have never had before. So I think if we stick to the definition that it's the lived experience of negative environmental change, then you can't experience the whole Earth, but you can experience parts of it that are symptomatic, emblematic of what's going on in the whole. For example, at Wallaby Farm, I'm now experiencing massive heat stress during our summer, and summer is now extending into spring and autumn, and we're getting temperatures averaging at 45, for weeks on end. It spiked 2 summers ago at 47, which started to kill things, including birds and plants. Now, that's a lived experience of a particular heat event in a unique place on the Earth. But it doesn't take much to see that what is happening here is happening elsewhere. So I have a virtual or empathetic understanding of heat stress in India or France or the United Kingdom or the United States during the recent heat waves that you've had there. So, I mean, we can't confine our thinking any longer to the local and the non-global. So I think as a global species, we do have the ability to have solastalgia writ large. And I wrote a short essay for a publication called The Conversation almost 10 years ago now, which I called The Age of Solastalgia. And I had in mind, like it was like the age of cholera in the Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel, that this is now a defining emotion for so many people worldwide. Now, that doesn't matter whether it's called solastalgia, but it's the experience of negative environmental change to a loved home environment. So the fact that I named it, gave it its own special concept, its own special name, its own linguistic origins, just simply I did something which needed to be done. It doesn't worry me if people have other names for it or use it in ways that are not quite precisely what I had in mind, but that's just the way the world is. And it's a kind of roller coaster. So it started 15 years ago with 0, and now you can find solastalgia just about everywhere. So, and that for me is an unfortunate outcome. I would have loved solastalgia to have never been a successful concept. And I write at the end of Earth Emotions, the book, that I hope that the Concise Oxford Dictionary can remove it from the e-pages of its dictionary by 2100 or even earlier, because it will become redundant. It'll be like the attempt of the Concise Oxford to remove words like conquer or buttercup or various other words that they attempted to remove last year or the year before. Oh, no, a couple of years ago now, because we've now realised that we're losing things in the world and concepts that describe them at a rapid rate, and we've been doing that under colonialism and a whole lot of other powerful change agents in the past. But I'd love the negative psychoterratic words that I create to become unpopular and disappear. That's my aim.
And so you've provided a contra to that, the concept of the Symbiocene.
Yeah. Well, the Symbiocene is more or less to be contrasted to my take on the Anthropocene, which is the age of human dominance. To get to the Symbiocene, I've created a whole lot of positive psychoterratic terms that I think follow on from things like the biophilia that was created by Eric Fromm and used extensively by people like E.O. Wilson, Twan's concept of topophilia, which is love of place. I created solophilia as a political concept to try and get people out of the distress of solastalgia and into the repair of the earth and the self-repair of the psyche that occurs when people start repairing that which is damaging their place and damaging, as many would put it, damaging their psyche at the same time. So solophilia I created to replace solidarity, mainly because solidarity in Australia is seen as a left-wing commie plot by trade unionists to take over the world and dominate everyone. So I figured, well, we need a non-political version of solidarity, so I created solophilia. But the way solophilia works is that it just means that when, for example, people recognise that their home environment is being destroyed or desolated, that people working together, we have organisations like Landcare in Australia where people collaborate, volunteer their time, plant trees, repair places, and generally restore an environment to one which is not necessarily exactly the same as it was prior to the disturbance, but it's one that gives a sense of creation, a sense of succession, a sense of regeneration that also flows into the way they view themselves. So they not only repair their personal damaged psyche, but by working with others, the solophilia, they actually repair communities as well. And the Symbiocene, as you would well guess, doesn't exist in Australia or the United States. It's a meme I've created to provide us with an endpoint, a future that we can work towards. And that seemed to me to be what was missing in a lot of the discussion in climate change and global development literature, that we all knew what was going wrong. It was negative to the extreme, really distressing, and everybody loves to look at a crash, an accident. But I realised that what was missing was an equally powerful meme that could give us some sense, excuse me, some sense of where we could go into the future, particularly for young people who are observing and understanding the debate about anthropogenic climate change and global development, but we're being given absolutely zero on, well, what do we do next, other than, you know, get angry or protest. So beyond anger and protest, there's the Symbiocene, which I see as an endpoint that provides us with a future that reintegrates humanity with the rest of nature and life. But it also gives humans something fantastic to do. You know, there's all this creative work that needs to be done to get rid of the toxicity which we've built into the Anthropocene, to get rid of the alienation that humans have erected between themselves and the rest of life. And that, to me, is a massively creative and enjoyable process, and something that young creative people can get stuck right into. And it doesn't matter whether you're a poet or an engineer, the task is still massively creative. It's endless. There's no unemployment. There's no boredom. There's no time to gamble or game. It's something which is all-consuming. So my way of introducing the meme of the symbiocene is to get people excited about this idea of a future which is worth living in, and to invite people to enter it, because once you get that idea, I think you can never get out of it. And that provides a platform or a base for people to think about, well, look, there is something worth doing. It's beyond the protest and beyond the angst. There's actually an exciting possibility for humanity. So I think as a 67-year-old grandfather, that's something I want to leave behind as well. It's one thing to diagnose part of the problem. It's quite another to offer what hopefully is a solution. And the solution we get back to World War III and the war of the emotions. There's nothing easy about this solution. And the war of the emotions, I think, has already started. I'm trying to provide a meta theme that helps people understand what's actually going on. The war has started. All I did in the book was officially declare it. That seems to me to be a useful thing to do. It's now on, and we can see it unfolding so clearly in the United States and Australia. Two countries that are outliers from the rest of the world with respect to leadership and policy that would help us make this transition from a hugely destructive Anthropocene era into one, well, at the very least would be a little bit better. We're not even doing that in Australia. One that's a lot better is being thought about, discussed, and implemented in countries other than Australia and the United States. So we probably a little bit out of whack with the rest of the world. All I can say is I'm trying in the rest of the world as well. The Earth Emotions will be published in French, so they're interested in a French edition, and that'll be coming out in February. I've written my work's been published into German, so I'm hoping that the sort of themes that I'm developing will be of interest to people, not only within Australia and the United States, which is obviously a place where I think it's needed more than anything else, or more than anywhere else. I'm hoping that it will be a global meme that will help people make a transition from something which is hugely negative into something which I believe is going to be hugely positive. And that's my distinctive contribution as a philosopher, feral transdisciplinary philosopher. That's my contribution. That's what I can do. I can't do much else.
Well, thank you for providing that. Are there any other messages from the book, Earth Emotions, you'd like to share with our viewers right now?
Well, it's a tough question because I think there are a lot. One of the themes that I'm developing is the critique of where we are now. I've discussed it in terms of gigantism and the dominance of certain key players in the world at the moment, particularly the multinationals that now control communication, which is quite clearly one of the things that we desperately need as human beings to communicate with one another. And so one of the themes that bothers me is that I use Amazon, for example, to sell my book. I didn't volunteer that. That's what Cornell University Press does. Well, I critique Amazon not because I don't like the idea that it's selling books. That's great. But because it's become virtually a monopoly, it's killing the diversity that used to exist in the world of books, for example. The existence of a bookshop is under threat. It's like a threatened species. The existence of libraries as places that hold real books is under threat. And these transitions are taking place without anyone seemingly noticing, and certainly there is not I don't see Extinction Rebellion rebelling against the closure of libraries. I mean, they've obviously got a bigger target, which is the whole earth. But extinction is applying to so many things about culture. So I'm arguing in the book that one of the issues is that we need to readdress diversity as a theme in both the biological and life world, and also in culture. And one of the ways of doing that is to begin to think about the revival of what I would call a regional scale of life for humans. And that's inconsistent with the gigantism, the monopolies and oligopolies that are occurring in communications, technological production, the software giants. And, it seems to me that the capitalist world has gone socialist. What used to be antitrust laws and things to keep capitalism competitive have now been taken over by forces that have giant monopolies that control and dominate. And of course, when they do that, they can use your data, they can dominate the world of advertising, they can censor, they can promote, they can do all sorts of things. So one of the meta themes of the book is the return of diversity into life is a foundation for a symbiotic relationship that humans can have with the rest of living, what's left of the life world. E.O. Wilson's half world, we've still got the glass half full. But that needs to go further in our thinking to, okay, well, let's do that with respect to biodiversity, but what about cultural diversity? We're losing languages, we're losing institutions, we're losing distinctive elements of culture, including agriculture, that once characterized the human world the world over. I mean, that's what made life interesting. By homogenizing the planet, we're making the place just freaking boring. It's just so boring as to make the idea of travel somewhat absurd. So we now have people running around the world to try and look at distinctive and interesting places before they're erased under the homogenizing forces of gigantism. Well, what kind of a world is that? So one of the major themes of the book is this attempt to have unity and diversity as one of the major themes. And it comes across in Western philosophy through Western philosophers such as Hegel. But I think now we've got some amazing stuff in science, particularly symbiotic science, the science that was pioneered by people like Lynn Margulis, and is built into concepts like the Gaia hypothesis. That's the kind of science that now underpins my belief that we are entitled through science to strongly advocate for the dismantling of forces which homogenize us and everything else on the planet. And so this advocacy for diversity and unity in diversity, that's the solophilia, the symbiocene, all of these ideas that are positive, everything like eutierria, one of the positive earth emotions, a good earth feeling, all of these things are predicated on being able to enjoy and appreciate that which is distinctive to your part of the world. Endomophilia. Yes, we need more endomophilia. To lose that is to lose the planet. It's to lose what makes life possible, and it is to lose what is distinctively human in different parts of the world. And so I'm a passionate advocate for what the French call terroir. Not only do I drink red wine and enjoy it, but I like the idea that there is something distinctive in the wine, the food, the culture, the everything of distinctive parts of the earth. And as humans, we are fantastically adaptable. We can live just about anywhere on the planet, and that's one thing. But to erase that distinctiveness that we create and to erect a gigantic, homogenous, globalized, technologically sophisticated, single economic system in place of all that is, in my view, a colossal loss. It's what extinction is about. It's it's the whole idea of ecocide that also comes up in the book. So I don't know if that answers the question, but you know, unity and diversity is my motto, and I'll stick to it.
Super. I think we're going to end the recording now so we can get some conversation with our audience. So thank you very much, and I'm stopping the recording now.